Hey, it's Father Scott and Father Vince. We're back here to talk to you about vocational discernment. And today we want to finish laying the foundation, really, for that spiritual foundation of the pre-discernment phase. So we've talked already about daily meditation. We've talked about the importance of having a spiritual director. Now we want to hit on the sacraments, and especially today we're going to focus on the Mass. Of course, confession is also a big part of the sacraments, but today we really want to hit on the Mass. So, Vince, why don't you talk to us a little bit about why Mass is so important?
Well, of course, we know that Mass is important. We're Catholics, so we know it's important to go every Sunday. But if you have the opportunity to go deeper, to understand the great mystery that is made present during the Mass, I would invite you to do that, whether it be through spiritual reading or through some sort of resource that can help you to go deeper to understand the great mystery. Why? Because the Mass is really an integral part of the vocational discernment process, because it's the heart of the entire Christian life. Why is that? Well, we believe that during the Mass, the passion, death, and resurrection of Jesus is really made present. Not only is that great mystery made present, we have the opportunity to enter into that mystery with our hearts, and then to receive the body and blood of Jesus into ourselves. So obviously, this is very important. In the Second Vatican Council, called the Eucharist, the source and the summit of the entire Christian life. So also, it's the source and summit of the entire vocational discernment process. And really, the Mass, every time you go to Mass, in some ways, it's a microcosm of the entire vocational discernment process, because we go to receive God's love, the self-gift of Himself, and to receive His love so we might have the strength to respond with our entire selves, which is what we would desire to do in the vocational discernment process. We believe that God has a plan for our lives, that He loves us with unconditional love, and that He gives us the strength to respond to that love with our entire selves. So that's why we want to go to Mass frequently, as much as possible. And also, one of the things that we like to emphasize is the importance of making a good thanksgiving after communion. Because, as you know, the sacraments, we believe that the sacraments are not magic. We don't just become saints after receiving the Eucharist once. Otherwise, we would have to go to Mass so often. But it's necessary to respond with love to the graces that are received in the sacraments. And so thanksgiving, because of this reason, and also because it's a lived relationship, it's important to spend time with Jesus after we receive Him. One example that we use often in one story is if you were to receive a friend into your home, to invite a friend over as a guest, you open the door, you invite him in, you invite him to sit down, and then you leave. Obviously, that you would never do something like that, because you want to stay with your friend, you want to converse with him, you want to be present to him when he's in your home. Well, the same is true with Jesus. When we receive Him into our bodies, when we receive Him into our home, we want to be present to Him. We want to converse with Him. We want to receive His love. We want to be joyful at His very presence within ourselves. And the great saints, especially even St. Teresa of Avila, before modern science, she taught her sisters that Jesus is present in our stomachs before He's digested, before the species are digested, for 10 to 15 minutes. So during that time, we really want to be present to Jesus and receive all the beautiful graces that He wishes to give us.
Yeah. And there's lots of ways to do Thanksgiving after communion, but just share with you one. St. Louis de Montfort, in his True Devotion to Mary, he really emphasizes that if we don't just want to be us receiving Jesus into our poor little hearts, we can ask Mary to come into our hearts, just like she came into that cave in Bethlehem to give birth to Jesus, that she comes into our own hearts, so that when Jesus gets there, it's not just Him and us, but it's Him and Mary, our mother, and us all together, forming this special community of love, so that it's us giving and receiving and witnessing how they interact in their love for one another, and maybe hearing them speak to one another, their loving words and things like that. So just to be able to enter into that and into that mystery. And then, of course, one of the big questions is, well, then how often should I go to Mass? If you could, every day would be ideal. Not everybody can do that. If you can go more than once a week, that's definitely highly encouraged, highly recommended, so that the more you're receiving God's love, the more you're responding to His love by giving your whole self back to Him, the easier, of course, it's going to be to go through this whole process. It's going to give you the strength to whatever God is asking you to do, to give up, you're going to be able to move, because you're going to have that spiritual strength. Of course, we only want to receive the Eucharist when we're in a state of grace. So if you've fallen in a mortal sin or whatever, go to confession. Even if you haven't, general rule, go to confession once a month. We'll talk more about it in an upcoming video, but just to be aware that, yeah, of course, if we're going to receive the Eucharist, we got to be ready to receive it, which means to be at least in a state of grace.